Why did you decide to move over in the first?
Well, I didn't actually decide because I was only 14 and a half, and it would be one mouth less to feed if I come over here, because I've come to England to my two older sisters, and I was that young at the time. My brother had to come with me because I wouldn't have been allowed to travel on my own. When I wasn't very excited about coming, so my mum paid a friend, which was 3 years older than me, that lived two doors from where we lived, and my mum paid her fare, and she come with me to Birmingham. And when I arrived in Birmingham, the disillusion of seeing, after leaving Ireland, with the Clare Hills and the River Shannon, and it was unfortunate, it was 1948, so it wasn't very long after the war. So the station was all blacked out. There was no railings on the parks, which I've always loved walking, being I was born in a green place. And so it wasn't very exciting. And I did miss my mum, because it was the first time I'd ever, in the 14 and a half years, spend the night away from home. So I couldn't start work when I come to Birmingham, because I had to finish the 3 months at school, because you had to be 15 to start work. So then my two sisters had to keep me. And when I did start work, and I worked 48 hours at the BSA factory in Small Heath, Birmingham, and I earned £1, 8 shillings for that, and that still wasn't enough to pay for my lodgings. So my sisters used to have to give me a shilling each between them
You want to turn that on?
to pay the landlady for my lodgings. And then after a year, and I was called to the office of one of the managers at the BSA, and he'd heard my plight, and he said, when you're 16, we're going to pay you £2, 16 shillings a week. I was jumping for joy. But when I got home with my first week's wages, my older sister, which was 20 years older than me, said, now I've got to have 10 shillings off you every week to send back home to Ireland, to our mum. So really, I still was only left with 8 shillings, which was very, very sad after all that working. But it was awful in the factory as well. It was so noisy, there was belts, wheels rolling round. Oh, it was awful. But you soon got used to it, because there was a lot of Irish really had to come over at that time, and it was just really for money, because there was no work in Ireland. So really it was poverty that drove everybody over at that time. But now, after being here 60 years now, I think I'm getting used to it. And I'm very proud of how I had to start, and I think it made me a stronger person, because I've always been able to get on with life, and I've been very, very lucky, been married now for 55 years, having one son and 4 daughters, and needless to say, now I've got 5 lovely grandsons and 2 lovely granddaughters. So my life here really has worked out very, very well, which I never would have dreamt of at that time.
If being Irish or anyone
Oh,
impacted?
yes. Well, as I said, when I did start work at the BSA, there was lots of laughter to know if I knew my left from my right, and things like that. And there was a lot of, really, the lodging houses wouldn't have you if you were Irish. And it wasn't very long before I come that it was up on all the factories and everywhere that no Irish need apply. So really we weren't, I don't suppose, meant that welcome. So we mainly stuck with anybody, friends we went to dances with were mainly Irish. But I did have two lovely friends at the BSA, which were two Birmingham girls, and they were really lovely, and at least I had them to turn to, especially none of us had a lot of money, so we done a lot of walking round parks, and whether we were out chasing the lads I don't know, but it seemed very good at the time. And what's it, and the other treatments, I don't know if I would say that, as I said, there was a few laughters about these Irish jokes and stuff like that, but I think we were able to stand up to that. And so I don't think on the whole that I can say that I was really very, very upset by some of the remarks, because they were a bit childish, really, to be asking people if they knew their left from their right. I think they thought none of us had ever went to school in Ireland and that we couldn't write and stuff like this. But I think they soon learned, after being with us for about a year, that everything, wasn't quite as bad, that we were that stupid and stuff like that. But everybody took it in. It wasn't just me. There was hundreds at the BSA, girls from north of Ireland, south of Ireland. But I will say we mainly kept at the dances to our own nationality, because we felt better there. And I will say I did have, when we were in lodgings, and I had a very bad accident on my finger. I had to have the top of my finger taken off. And the landlady said I couldn't go to work because my arm was in a sling, and it was January. I can always remember how cold. And she said, you do realise you will have to leave the house in the morning at 7 o'clock and walk around all day and come home at 6 with your two sisters. You cannot stay in this house for the 8 hours. So after the month, I must have lost a couple of stone. I was only about 7 stone at the time. But that I thought was very, very cruel. Things like that. I don't know why I couldn't stay, because we paid for the rooms. We had 2 rooms, a little room downstairs where we ate our meals, and our bedroom upstairs. There was 3 beds, and it was a lovely big bedroom, and our home was beautiful and clean. And our husband was a butcher. He had a butcher shop down below. That was on the Stratford Road. And but I don't know why I couldn't have stayed in the house. And things like that, I think if it happened today, would be on the front of the papers. And, would be my equal rights and everything else. But you just had to get on with it and make the best of it.
Just if we go back to your life in Ireland before.
Oh, in Ireland. Well, I was born in Limerick. And I went to school at St. John's Convent School. And the schooling there was very, very good for 1930s. I was born 1933. And the nuns we had, some were very, very cross and everything like that. But at least you did learn to respect them. You may not have liked them, but you had to respect them. And then when I got to about 3 or 4, just before I went to school, I had a bad accident on my leg. So I was in hospital for 3 years. So when I got back to school, whether they'd forgotten what age group I was in, but I was actually passed on to 7-year-olds instead of being left with the 6-year-olds. And so of course when I come to 14, I was only 13, but they were all 14 in my class. So they taught me I still had to leave. And my mum took me to the technical school, which you could have gone to at 14. And they said, we're very sorry, we can't have her here. She's got to be 14. So away I had to go back and start off with the other 14-year-old girls at school. And what I did love doing was I went to Irish dancing because of this leg breaking. It was advisable that I done exercise. So I had 10 years before I come to Birmingham of doing all the Irish dancing. We done shows and competitions, and I loved, really, I suppose I had to learn how to play football and hurling because there was only 6 lads lived down my street. I was the only girl. So that was very good at the time. So I still love football today. So in my childhood, as I said, I was the youngest of 10. So I was actually spoiled by, really, my mum, because she taught me off. My older brothers would tell my mum to leave me. I was only a baby. And if they taught me off, my mother would stand up to it. So I was really spoiled, really spoiled. And my one brother, even when he got to 50, used to remember with me on the floor kicking out blue murder because I couldn't get my own way, being spoiled really by a mom. And so as I said, I felt I had a good schooling. And but before I come over, in spite of being only 14, I had to have a medical to say that I was in perfect health. The police, I had to go to the police station, to the officer there, and he had to sign that I was of good character. And it was all got to do with that. But as I said, on the whole, I felt I had a lovely childhood. So needless to say, at 14 and a half, I found it very, very sad to have to leave. But they had no option but to let you go because they couldn't afford to keep you.